Welcome to my channel Unleash Your English, my friends. Today is World Book Day, but this is not just about reading books. It's about meeting the people behind them, the authors who lived, loved, failed, and still wrote stories that changed the world. What if I told you their real-life stories can also teach you English? Stay with me till the end and tell me in the comments, which author inspires you the most? Chapter 1. A Day for Books. Every year, there is one day when the world stops for a moment to celebrate something that lives in our hearts: books. It is not just a normal day. It is not about buying or selling. It is about remembering the power of stories, the magic of words, and the way a single page can make you travel to another time or another place without leaving your chair. This day is called World Book Day, and it is more than just a date on a calendar. It is a reminder that words can change people, and people can change the world. World Book Day is celebrated on April 23rd every year. This date is very special. It is the day when the world remembers the lives of great writers who gave us stories we still love today. Imagine this is the day when William Shakespeare, one of the greatest English writers, died. It is also the day when Miguel de Cervantes, the Spanish author of Don Quixote, died. And even more, it is the birthday of Inca Garcilaso de la Vega, a writer who kept the stories of his people alive. 3 great names, one single date. It feels like the universe chose this day to honor books forever. When you think about it, a book is more than paper and ink. It is like a little door. When you open it, you can step inside someone's mind. You can see the world through their eyes. On World Book Day, people everywhere open these doors together. In schools, teachers tell children stories. In libraries, people gather to read aloud. On the streets, some cities even give out free books to strangers. It's a day when everyone becomes a little bit closer because we are all part of the same story-loving family. I want you to think about the first book you ever read. Was it a picture book? A school book? Maybe a comic? You might not remember every page, but you remember the feeling. Maybe you laughed. Maybe you were curious. Maybe you stayed up late because you couldn't stop reading. That is what World Book Day is all about, that feeling, that magic. It reminds us why we read in the first place. But here is something you might not know: World Book Day is not only about reading. It is also about writing. Many people start writing their first poem, first diary page, or first short story on this day. Why? Because they feel inspired. They realize that famous authors were once normal people too, just like you and me. They had normal days, normal problems, and normal dreams until they started putting their thoughts into words. This is why I love this day. It's a chance to remember that your story matters, no matter who you are or where you live. And I will tell you something even more special. On World Book Day, some people exchange books as gifts. They write small notes inside a message, a date, or even just their name, so the person who receives the book always remembers where it came from. It's like giving someone a piece of your mind and heart. One day, you might open a book and find a note from years ago, and it will make you smile. That is the magic of sharing stories. If you close your eyes for a moment, you can imagine it. Somewhere in the world, a child is reading their very first book. Somewhere else, a grandmother is reading a bedtime story to her grandchild. A teenager is finding a book that makes them feel understood for the first time. A young woman is writing a sentence that will one day change someone's life. And on this day, all of them are connected not by the internet, not by phones, but by the invisible thread of stories. That is why we start our journey here, on World Book Day. Because today is not just about authors who became famous, it is about every person who ever picked up a book, smiled at a sentence, or felt less alone because of a story. And as we move forward, I will take you on a journey to meet some of the most famous authors in history. You will learn about their lives, their struggles, and their dreams. And I promise, you will see them not as unreachable legends, but as people just like you, people who dared to write their hearts down and share them with the world. So, tell me in the comments, what is the book that has stayed in your heart forever? Because as we continue, you might just find out that your favorite author once had a story that could inspire your own. Chapter 2: The Boy from Straford. Long before he became the most famous playwright in the world, William Shakespeare was simply a boy running through the streets of a small English town called Stratford-upon-Avon. The houses were small, the streets were narrow, and the smell of bread from the bakery mixed with the sound of church bells. He wasn't born rich. His father made gloves for a living, and his mother took care of the home. But young William had something that not everyone in Straford had: an endless curiosity. He wanted to know everything, see everything, and hear every story he could find. In school, he learned Latin and read old plays and poems. But I think his real classroom was the town itself. He would watch travelers come in, hear them talk about faraway places, and imagine what those places looked like. Maybe he saw actors performing in the market square. Maybe he stayed up late listening to grown-ups tell tales of kings, battles, and love. Without even knowing it, he was collecting pieces of the world in his mind, storing them like treasures for later. But Shakespeare's life was not always easy. We don't know every detail, but historians believe he left school at a young age because his family needed help. Imagine being a teenager with big dreams, but no easy way to follow them. Yet, instead of giving up, he found stories everywhere: in people's laughter, in their arguments, in their secrets. That's what made him different. He didn't just live life, he studied it. One day, he left Stratford and went to London. It was a busy, noisy city full of theaters, markets, and people from all over the world. For a young man who loved stories, it was like stepping into a giant book. He began acting in plays, but soon his words became more powerful than his performances. His first works made people laugh and cry, sometimes on the same night. Audiences started to notice something special. Shakespeare wrote about kings and queens, yes, but he also wrote about normal people. He made everyone's story important. And here's the part that will surprise you: Shakespeare invented over 1,700 words in English. Words we still use today, like lonely, bedroom, and moonbeam. Imagine having the courage to create a word that no one had heard before, and then having the whole world use it for hundreds of years. That's the power of believing in your own voice. Even now, more than 400 years later, his plays are performed in every corner of the world. You don't have to understand every old English word to feel them. You can see the love in Romeo and Juliet, the ambition in Macbeth, the humor in A Midsummer Night's Dream. These words are alive because they talk about things we all feel: love, jealousy, hope, fear. If William Shakespeare were alive today, I think he would tell you something important. You don't need to be born rich or live in a big city to write something powerful. You just need to pay attention to the world around you. Listen carefully, and dare to put your thoughts into words. He started as just the boy from Straford, but he became the man whose words shaped a language. So, I'll ask you this: if Shakespeare could turn his small-town life into stories the whole world loves, what could you do with your own life stories? Keep that question in your mind, because in our next chapter, we'll travel from England to Spain to meet another man who turned his imagination into one of the greatest adventures ever written. Chapter 3: The Spanish Dreamer. Far away from the green fields of England and the warm sun of Spain, a boy named Miguel de Cervantes was growing up with a heart full of dreams. His family was not wealthy, and life was often difficult. But Miguel had something no one could take away: an imagination so big it could not be contained by the walls of his home. He would watch the streets filled with merchants, soldiers, and travelers, and in his mind, they became heroes, villains, and adventurers. Even in the toughest moments, he found comfort in stories. As a young man, Miguel's life was anything but simple. He became a soldier and fought in battles that were loud, dangerous, and terrifying. One battle left him badly injured, and his left hand was permanently damaged. Yet instead of letting this stop him, Miguel learned something important: that courage is not only found on the battlefield, but also in the quiet moments when you decide to keep going. That decision, to never give up, would one day lead him to write the book that made him famous. But before fame, there was struggle. Miguel was captured by pirates and spent 5 years as a prisoner. Imagine that: 5 long years away from home, away from family, with only hope to keep you alive. And still, in those dark times, his imagination kept him company. He would think about knights, castles, and journeys into the unknown. In his mind, he was already writing the story that would change literature forever. That story became Don Quixote, the tale of an old man who loved books about knights so much that he decided to become one himself. He put on armor, took a sword, and went out to fight for justice. But there was one problem: the world had changed, and real knights no longer existed. Don Quixote fought windmills, thinking they were giants. He mistook ordinary inns for castles. He saw the world not as it was, but as he believed it should be. People laughed at Don Quixote, but they also loved him because deep down, we all know what it's like to chase a dream that seems impossible. Miguel used humor to hide a deep truth: that sometimes the world needs dreamers. Without them, nothing new would ever happen. When Don Quixote was published, it became one of the most important books ever written. Today, it is read in almost every language in the world. Some call it the first modern novel. And the reason it is still loved is simple: it reminds us that believing in your dreams, even when others don't, is not foolish. It's brave. Think about this: Miguel de Cervantes went from being a poor boy to a wounded soldier to a prisoner to a man whose book would be read for centuries. He didn't let failure stop him. He didn't let pain silence him. He didn't wait for life to be perfect before he began writing. He wrote because his heart told him to. And that's the same reason his story still touches hearts today. If Cervantes could speak to you now, I believe he would say, "Dream, even if the world calls you crazy. Keep going, even if the road is long. And most of all, tell your story, because you never know who it might inspire." In our next chapter, we will climb high into the mountains to meet a man who carried 2 worlds inside him and used his words to make sure both would be remembered forever. Chapter 4: A Life in the Mountains. High in the mountains of Peru, where the air is thin and the clouds seem close enough to touch, a boy named Gomez Suarez de Figueroa was born. But the world would later know him by another name, Inca Garcilaso de la Vega. His life was unlike most children's. He was the son of a Spanish conquistador and an Inca noblewoman, which meant he carried two different worlds inside him: the world of the Spanish invaders and the world of the Inca people who had lived on those lands for centuries. From the time he was small, Garcilaso listened to two kinds of stories. His mother and her family told him the legends of the Inca, stories about the sun god, the sacred mountains, and the kings who ruled long before the Spanish came. These tales were rich with tradition, color, and deep respect for nature. His father's world was different, full of European ideas, history, and politics. For many, these two worlds were in conflict. But for Garcilaso, they were treasures to be kept and remembered. Life was not always peaceful. The arrival of the Spanish had brought war, sickness, and loss to the Inca people. Many voices from his mother's side were being silenced, and their history was being rewritten or forgotten. Garcilaso felt the pain of that loss. He knew that if someone did not write these stories down, they might disappear forever, and so he carried them inside him like a secret library, waiting for the right time to share them with the world. When he was a young man, Garcilaso moved to Spain. Imagine that, leaving behind the mountains, the language of your childhood, the faces you love, and stepping into a place where you are different from everyone else. In Spain, he learned to write in the style of European scholars, but he never forgot the songs and words of his Inca heritage. In fact, he began to weave them together. He realized that his gift was not choosing one world over the other, but joining them so both could live on the same page. His most famous work, Comentarios Reales de los Incas, was more than just a history book. It was a bridge between two cultures. In clear, beautiful words, he told the stories of the Inca kings, their traditions, their victories, and their wisdom. He showed the Spanish and the wider world that the Inca civilization was not a lost, primitive culture, but a rich and intelligent society that deserved respect. For beginners in English or in any language, Garcilaso's life teaches something powerful. You don't have to erase one part of yourself to belong in another world. You can carry your past proudly while learning new ways to tell your story. In fact, it is your unique combination of experiences that makes your voice worth hearing. I often wonder what Garcilaso must have felt when he saw his books being read by people far from the mountains of his childhood. Maybe he smiled, knowing that somewhere an Inca grandmother's story about the sun god was now alive in the mind of a reader across the ocean. Maybe he felt a quiet victory, the kind that comes not from winning a war, but from keeping something precious alive. Today, his work is read not only in Peru or Spain, but around the world. And every time someone opens his book, the mountains, rivers, and voices of his people rise again, fresh and alive. That is the power of writing from the heart. If Inca Garcilaso de la Vega could speak to you now, I think you would say, do not be ashamed of where you come from. Your story is your strength. Share it, and you give life to your people, your family, and yourself. In our next chapter, we will leave the mountains and step into the quiet English countryside, where a young woman named Jane was secretly writing stories that would one day capture the hearts of millions. Chapter 5. A Girl Named Jane. In a small, quiet village in England, over 200 years ago, a girl named Jane Austen was growing up surrounded by fields, gardens, and the gentle rhythm of country life. At first glance, nothing about her world seemed extraordinary: no grand castles, no glamorous parties, no famous family name. But Jane carried something extraordinary inside her: the ability to see beauty and meaning in the smallest moments of everyday life. While others might see a simple walk down a country lane, Jane could turn it into a scene filled with romance, tension, and humor. Jane was one of 8 children in a lively family. Her father was a clergyman, her mother loved telling stories, and the house was always full of conversation, reading, and laughter. In those days, girls were not encouraged to write for the public, but Jane didn't care about rules that tried to limit her. She began writing at a young age, filling notebooks with stories, poems, and even playful parodies of the books she read. Writing was not just a hobby for her, it was how she understood the world. Her characters were not kings, queens, or warriors. They were ordinary people: daughters worried about marriage, mothers trying to secure a good future for their children, young men struggling with pride or shyness. But Jane had a rare gift. She could take an ordinary tea party and make it as thrilling as a sword fight. Every raised eyebrow, every half smile, every carefully chosen word could carry a whole hidden meaning. She understood that life's biggest dramas often happen in the smallest rooms. But Jane's writing life was not easy. At first, she had to write in secret. When guests visited her home, she would quickly hide her pages so no one would see. This was not because she was ashamed, but because the world was not yet ready to take women writers seriously. Still, she never stopped. In the quiet of her home, between daily chores and family duties, she polished her sentences until they shone. Her first major success was Sense and Sensibility. Published anonymously, the cover said "Only by a Lady." Then came Pride and Prejudice, a novel so alive with wit and warmth that it has never gone out of print since the day it was first published. People fell in love with her characters because they felt real, as if they could step right out of the book and join you for tea. Elizabeth Bennet, Mr. Darcy, and so many others became timeless, living in the hearts of readers across generations. What's even more inspiring is that Jane Austen achieved this without traveling the world, without huge wealth, and without powerful connections. She wrote from her little village, proving that you don't have to be in the center of the world to write something that touches it. All you need is the courage to put your truth into words. Jane's life ended too soon. She died at the age of 41. But in that short time, she created stories that have lasted more than 2 centuries. Today, her books are translated into many languages, adapted into films, and loved by millions. Her humor, her understanding of human nature, and her quiet defiance of society's limits continue to inspire not only writers, but anyone who has ever been told, "You can't." If Jane Austen could speak to you now, I believe she would say, look closely at your own life. The stories are already there. You don't have to be someone else or live somewhere else to create beauty. You just have to start writing. And so, from the quiet villages of England, our journey will now take us into a much more modern world, a world where magic trains, spells, and wands made a woman named Joan famous as the creator of one of the most beloved series in history. Chapter 6: The Lonely Wizard. Long before the world knew the name Harry Potter, there was a young woman named Joanne Rowling, sitting in a small cafe with a notebook, a cup of coffee, and a heart full of stories. She was not famous. She was not rich. In fact, life at that time was very hard. She was a single mother, raising her baby daughter alone, struggling to pay rent, and wondering how she could build a better life. But inside her mind, there lived a boy wizard with messy hair, round glasses, and a lightning-shaped scar, and he would not stop knocking on the door of her imagination. Joanne, who we now know as J.K. Rowling, first thought of Harry Potter while riding a delayed train from Manchester to London. She didn't have a pen, she didn't have paper, just the image of a young boy who didn't yet know he was special. By the time she got home, the story had already begun to grow. She imagined his school, his friends, his enemies, and a magical world hidden inside the ordinary one. But turning that idea into a book was not easy. She wrote in cafes because her apartment was too cold to sit in for long. She wrote when her baby was sleeping. She wrote when she was tired, when she was worried, and when she didn't know if anyone would ever read her words. And here's the part that could have stopped her. 12 different publishers rejected the first Harry Potter book. 12 times, strangers told her it wasn't good enough. 12 times, she could have given up. But she didn't. Finally, one small publisher decided to take a chance on her. They printed just 500 copies of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and nobody could have imagined what would happen next. Children fell in love with Harry, Hermione, Ron, and the magic of Hogwarts. Parents read the books aloud at bedtime. The series grew bigger and bigger until it became a global phenomenon, selling hundreds of millions of copies in dozens of languages. What makes Rowling's story so powerful is not just the success, it's the fact that it began in a moment of struggle. She had no guarantee that her dream would work, but she believed in it enough to keep going. Even when the world seemed to say no. For anyone learning English, or learning anything at all, her journey is a reminder. Your dream doesn't have to start big. It just has to start. The Harry Potter series didn't just entertain people, it brought reading back into the lives of millions of children. In a time when many kids preferred television or video games, Rowling's books made them pick up a book willingly, excited to turn each page. That is the kind of magic that lasts longer than any spell. And even after all her success, Rowling often talks about the importance of failure. She says that hitting rock bottom, having nothing left to lose, gave her the freedom to try without fear. That's a lesson we can all carry. Sometimes the darkest moments are the beginning of our best chapters. If J.K. Rowling could speak to you today, I think she would say, don't wait for the perfect moment to begin. Start now. Even if your life feels ordinary, your imagination can make it extraordinary. From the busy streets of modern England, we now step into a world of bright colors, rhymes, and pictures, a world where a man used simple words to make reading fun for millions of children. Chapter 7. The Man Who Drew Words. In a world where reading was sometimes seen as boring homework, there came a man who made it feel like play. His name was Theodore Seuss Geisel, but most people know him simply as Dr. Seuss. He was not just a writer. He was a magician who could turn a handful of simple words into a whole new universe. With just a few rhymes and some wild, colorful drawings, he could make children laugh, think, and want to read more often without even realizing they were learning. Dr. Seuss didn't start out planning to be the king of children's books. He began as a cartoonist, drawing funny pictures for magazines and advertisements. But somewhere along the way, he discovered the magic of combining pictures with words in a way no one else had done before. His sentences danced, his words played tricks, and his characters, like the mischievous cat in the hat or the kind-hearted Horton, the elephant, felt like friends you could visit whenever you opened a book. What made Dr. Seuss special was how he understood children. He knew they didn't want long, complicated sentences. They wanted rhythm, rhyme, and surprise. They wanted to turn the page because they couldn't wait to see what came next. And so he used short words, simple language, and a music-like beat that made reading feel like singing. Even adults found themselves smiling as they read his books aloud to their kids. One of his most famous works, Green Eggs and Ham, was written using only 50 different words. Why? Because his publisher bet him he couldn't make a good story with so few words. Dr. Seuss accepted the challenge and created a book that has been read by millions around the world. That's the kind of creative bravery that turns a small idea into a global treasure. But Dr. Seuss didn't just make people laugh. Hidden inside his playful rhymes were powerful lessons about kindness, courage, and imagination. In Horton Hears a Who, he reminded us that a person's a person, no matter how small. In the Lorax, he warned about caring for the environment before it's too late. Without being heavy or serious, he planted big ideas into little minds' ideas that stayed there for life. For anyone learning English, Dr. Seuss is a gift. His words are simple enough for beginners, but his ideas are rich enough for everyone. Reading his books out loud helps with pronunciation, rhythm, and confidence. And because they're so fun, you forget you're practicing it all. That's the best way to learn when it doesn't feel like work. I think if Dr. Seuss could talk to you today, he would say something like, "Words are not just for tests or homework. They are toys. Play with them. Mix them up. Make them rhyme. And most of all, enjoy them." From the bright, colorful world of Dr. Seuss, our journey now moves into a deeper and more serious place. The heart of Russia during a time of war, to meet a man whose words were as wide and powerful as the history they told. Chapter 8. From War to Peace. In the vast, cold lands of Russia, where winter can feel endless and the forests stretch farther than the eye can see, a young man named Leo Tolstoy was born into a world of privilege. His family was wealthy, his home a large estate, and his childhood full of comfort. Yet, even in such a life, Tolstoy felt a restless hunger inside him, a need to understand the meaning of life, love, and why people do the things they do. That search would one day lead him to write books so powerful that they are still read in every corner of the world. As a young man, Tolstoy went to war. It was not the kind of war told in songs and celebrations. It was messy, painful, and filled with loss. He saw soldiers fall. He saw fear in the eyes of men who had once been brave. And he realized something important. War was not just about battles and flags. It was about people, each with their own story. This truth stayed with him long after he returned home, and it would shape his writing forever. Tolstoy's most famous works, War and Peace and Anna Karenina, were not just books. They were entire worlds. In War and Peace, he took the huge events of history and showed them through the eyes of ordinary people. He made you feel the cold of the battlefield, the joy of a family dinner, the heartbreak of loss, and the hope that love can survive even in the hardest times. In Anna Karenina, he explored the deep, complicated emotions that drive people to make choices that change their lives forever. What made Tolstoy different from other writers was his honesty. He did not pretend that life was simple or easy. He showed that people could be brave and selfish, kind and cruel, loving and careless, sometimes all in the same day. His characters felt real because they were not perfect. They were human. And for anyone learning English, his stories are a lesson in how the smallest details, a glance, a word, a silence, can carry so much meaning. But Tolstoy's life was not just about writing. As he grew older, he began to search for deeper truths beyond fame and success. He gave up many of his possessions, dressed simply, and worked alongside farmers in the fields. He believed that true happiness came not from money or titles, but from living honestly, helping others, and being at peace with yourself. Even now, more than a century after his death, people around the world find wisdom in his words. He reminds us that life is short, that kindness matters, and that love in all its forms is the most important thing we can give or receive. If Tolstoy could speak to you today, I believe you would say, "Do not measure your life by the battles you win, but by the hearts you touch. Live simply, love deeply, and write your own story with courage." From the snowy fields of Russia, we now step into a garden that has been locked for years, a place of secrets, flowers, and hope, to meet the woman who taught the world that even the coldest winter can turn into spring. Chapter 9. The Secret Garden Lady. In the late 1800s, a little girl named Frances Hodgson Burnett was growing up in Manchester, England. At first, her life was comfortable. Her father owned a shop, and her home was warm and safe. But when Frances was just a child, her father died suddenly, leaving her family in financial trouble. The security she had known disappeared almost overnight. Her mother decided to take the family across the ocean to the United States, hoping for a better life. They settled in Tennessee, but it was not the dream they had imagined. Life was hard, money was scarce, and young Frances had to grow up quickly. Even in those difficult years, Frances found escape in her imagination. She began writing stories when she was still a teenager, sending them to magazines for a few dollars. At first, it was just a way to help her family survive. But slowly, her words began to travel. People noticed the warmth, hope, and magic in her storytelling. She had a gift for creating worlds where sadness could be healed, where love could grow again, and where beauty could be found in unexpected places. Her most famous work, The Secret Garden, was published in 1911. It tells the story of Mary Lennox, a spoiled and lonely girl who discovers a locked, hidden garden. At first, the garden is silent and lifeless, just like Mary's heart. But as she begins to care for it, flowers bloom, trees grow strong, and life returns not only to the garden, but to Mary and the people around her. It is a story about how nature, kindness, and patience can turn even the darkest winter into spring. Readers fell in love with The Secret Garden because it wasn't just about plants and flowers, it was about healing. Everyone has times in life when the world feels closed off, when we feel locked inside ourselves. Frances reminded us that even when things seem hopeless, there is always a door waiting to be opened, if only we have the courage to look for the key. For English learners, The Secret Garden is a gentle, beautiful way to experience storytelling. Its language is clear, its scenes are vivid, and its message is universal. You can almost smell the roses, feel the sun on your face, and hear the wind in the trees as you read. And without realizing it, you learn new words that feel alive because they grow inside a story. Frances Hodgson Burnett did not have an easy life. She lost loved ones, faced criticism, and often felt lonely. But she never stopped writing stories that gave people hope. She understood that a book could be more than entertainment, it could be a safe place, a reminder that beauty can bloom again after loss. If Frances could speak to you now, I think she would say, no matter how closed your life feels, there is a garden waiting for you. Care for it, and it will care for you. From the quiet garden walls, we now step onto the wide, open river to meet a man who filled his pages with adventure, humor, and the wild spirit of freedom. Chapter 10: The Adventure's Maker. In a small town along the Mississippi River, in the year 1835, a boy named Samuel Langhorne Clemens was born. The world would later know him by a different name, Mark Twain, a name that would become a symbol of adventure, humor, and the magic of storytelling. His childhood was filled with the sights and sounds of the river, the splash of paddles in the water, the call of the steamboat captains, and the laughter of children playing along the shore. This river would one day become the lifeblood of his most famous tales. Mark Twain didn't have an easy path to becoming a writer. His father died when he was only 11 years old, and young Samuel had to work to help support his family. He became a printer's apprentice, setting type for newspapers, and in his spare time, he read whatever he could get his hands on. Books became his teachers. Later, he worked as a riverboat pilot on the Mississippi, an experience that gave him not just a job, but a deep understanding of the river's moods, dangers, and beauty. When he finally began writing stories, Twain brought all of that experience with him. He didn't write about kings or queens. He wrote about the people he knew, the mischievous boys, the hard-working families, the travelers, the dreamers. His characters were alive because they were real. In the adventures of Tom Sawyer and the adventures of Huckleberry Finn, he captured the spirit of freedom, friendship, and curiosity in a way no one had done before. One of the most remarkable things about Twain was his humor. He could make you laugh out loud one moment and think deeply the next. His jokes were often wrapped around truths about life, society, and human nature. He showed that you could tell important stories without being heavy or boring. For beginners in English, his writing is a reminder that language doesn't have to be complicated to be powerful, it just has to be honest. But Twain's life wasn't all joy and laughter. He faced business failures, lost loved ones, and struggled financially later in life. Yet, he never stopped writing, never stopped speaking, and never stopped observing the world with a sharp eye and a warm heart. He turned even his pain into lessons that readers could feel and understand. The reason his books are still read today is simple. They speak to something deep inside us, the longing for adventure, the desire to break free, the joy of friendship, and the belief that life is meant to be lived fully. When Huck Finn sets off on a raft down the Mississippi, you can feel the wind, smell the river, and hear the water against the wood. It's not just a story, it's an experience. If Mark Twain could speak to you now, I believe he would say, don't wait for life to happen, go and find it. Adventure is out there, but you have to step onto the raft. And now, from the flowing river of America, we sail across oceans and into a land of poetry and song to meet a man who saw the whole world through words, and whose voice still echoes like music today. Chapter 11. The Poet Who Saw the World. In the warm, golden light of Bengal, in the year 1861, a boy named Rabindranath Tagore was born into a family that loved art, music, and literature. Even as a child, he had a quiet intensity in his eyes, as if he were already listening to some secret song the rest of the world couldn't hear. His home was alive with culture. Poets visited, musicians played, and conversations about philosophy flowed like the rivers of India. But young Tagore wasn't content to just listen. From an early age, he began to create. By the time he was a teenager, he was writing poems that carried the depth of someone far older. He saw beauty not only in grand things, but in the smallest details. The way light falls through leaves, the sound of rain on a roof, the scent of a flower opening at dawn. For him, nature was not separate from people. It was part of the same story. His words painted pictures so vivid that even if you had never seen the rivers of Bengal or the fields of Shantiniketan, you could feel them in your heart. But Tagore was more than just a poet. He was a songwriter, painter, educator, and thinker. He wrote thousands of poems, songs, plays, and stories. His music was so powerful that two of his songs later became national anthems, one for India, Jana Gana Mana, and one for Bangladesh, Amar Shanar Bangla. And yet, despite his fame, he carried himself with humility. He believed that art was not for showing off, but for connecting human hearts. In 1913, Tagore became the first non-European to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. The award brought him global recognition, but what truly mattered to him was not the medal or the applause. It was the chance to share his vision of a world united by love, peace, and understanding. He traveled widely, visiting countries across Asia, Europe, and America, speaking about unity, education, and the beauty of cultural exchange. Wherever he went, he carried the soul of Bengal with him, like a lantern lighting the way. For English learners, Tagore's translated works are a gift. His language is simple but profound, easy to read, yet full of meaning. In poems like Where the Mind is Without Fear, he invites you into a space where words are not just for communication, but for touching the soul. He reminds us that English or any language becomes beautiful when it carries truth, emotion, and humanity. Tagore's life was not without sorrow. He lost several members of his family, including his wife and children, and faced moments of deep grief. Yet, even in pain, he found beauty. He wrote that the same hands that bring flowers in spring also bring the falling leaves in autumn, and both are part of life's music. If Tagore could speak to you now, I believe he would say, do not just look at the world, feel it. Every sunrise, every smile, every drop of rain is a poem waiting for you to write it. And now, as our journey reaches its final chapter, we turn from the great authors of the past to you, the person holding this story in your hands, ready to begin your own. Chapter 12, Your Story Matters. We have walked together through the lives of great authors, from the boy in Straford who wrote plays for the ages, to the Spanish dreamer who made a night out of windmills, to the poet of Bengal whose words were like music. We have seen gardens bloom, rivers flow, and magical worlds rise from the imagination of those who dared to write them down. And now, it is time to turn the page to the most important story of all yours. It's easy to look at these famous names and think they were born special, as if they were chosen from the start to become legends. But the truth is, every single one of them began as a normal person. They faced struggles, doubts, rejection, and moments when their dreams seemed impossible. What made them extraordinary was not where they came from, but what they decided to do with their words. They wrote anyway. They spoke anyway. They shared anyway. Your life is already a story even if you haven't written it down yet. Every moment you've lived, every challenge you've faced, every hope you've carried in your heart is a chapter that belongs to you. You don't need to wait until you become something or achieve something to start telling it. The authors we've met didn't wait for perfect conditions. Jane Austen wrote in secret between chores. J.K. Rowling wrote in a cafe with a sleeping baby beside her. Cervantes imagined adventures while living in a prison cell. If they could write in those moments, so can you. And here's the beautiful thing: you don't have to write in perfect English to write in meaningful English. The language of the heart is more powerful than any grammar rule. If you are learning English right now, let these authors be your teachers. But also let them be your proof that you can share your truth in any language. Start small. One sentence about your day, one memory from your childhood, one dream for your future. That's how every great story begins, with a single line. Some people will tell you your story is too small to matter. They are wrong. There is someone in the world who needs to hear exactly what you have to say, someone who will feel less alone because you put your thoughts into words. Remember the secret garden? One key can open a locked door. Your words can be that key for someone else. If you take just one thing from all the lies we've explored today, let it be this. Books don't just come from authors, they come from courage. Courage to remember, courage to imagine, courage to share. You have that courage inside you, whether you believe it yet or not. So when this video ends, don't let the story stop here. Pick up a pen, open a blank page, or speak into a voice recorder. Tell the world who you are, where you've been, and where you want to go. Your words might not be famous today, or tomorrow, or even years from now, but they will be yours, and that is enough. Because one day, maybe many years from now, someone will turn the page, see your name, and begin reading the story you left behind. And in that moment, your voice will live again. If this journey through the lives of great authors has inspired you, let's make a promise to never stop reading, never stop learning, and never stop telling our own stories. Subscribe to this channel for more stories in simple English, like this video, so more people can find it, and write in the comments one sentence about your own life. Because today, on World Book Day, the most important story is yours.